Welcome to Petworth House. My name is Rob Jackson. I'm the General Manager for the Petworth portfolio. Petworth House is well known as the home of the National Trust's greatest art collection, but also for this great Capability Brown landscape. Capability Brown was commissioned by the 2nd Earl of Egremont in the late 1700s to transform a former deer park with formal gardens into this much more naturalistic landscape. Petworth has belonged to the same family since 1150, and during that time there's been a long association with deer. We certainly know from records dating back to at least the 1600s that there have been deer in Petworth Park, and indeed the surveyors of the 8th Earl of Northumberland in 1574 mentioned Petworth's Little Park, which was 220 acres over the other side of the current lake, where there were noted to be 74 deer.
Welcome to the interior of Petworth House itself. My name is Andrew Laux and I'm the House and Collections Manager at Petworth. This is a painting of Petworth Park by J.M.W. Turner, who is represented prolifically at Petworth. There are 20 oil paintings by him in the house. And this one in particular, of course, represents the great spread of Petworth Park and is installed in the carved room, which is a room that was redeveloped by the 3rd Earl in the 1790s, specifically for dining. This one particularly gives an account of not only the breadth of the park, but also actually neatly encapsulates much of the 3rd Earl's personality and his interests. We certainly have a very clear indication of the scale of the deer herd in the early 19th century. These paintings were commissioned in about 1828 and were installed by 1830. Interestingly, there's also this pair of fighting stags in their brilliant white coats, which forms a neat parallel with the whites of the cricketers on the other side of the canvas, although again highly improbable that this activity that we normally associate and see during the rutting season is happening in the height of summer when the cricket match is taking place. This one shows a close-up view of the main lake at Petworth, again bathed in this golden, glorious, classical light. And it's quite interesting because although the whole picture appears at first glance to be an almost abstract painting, which is very loosely handled, actually when you get up close to it and you really scrutinise it, you begin to notice all sorts of fabulous details. And this, of course, is completely consistent with what people expected from artists in the 19th century. They wanted narrative and they wanted finish and stories to enjoy. And one of the wonderful details is this tiny figure on the far shore of the lake. And this is almost certainly intended to be a representation of the 3rd Earl, Turner's great patron here. We also have the fallow deer represented once more, with one of them taking a drink here, as well as this wonderful array of birds, swans and so on. This painting here, of course, represents Henry VIII and is possibly the finest existing likeness of Henry. It comes from the painter Hans Holbein's studio, Holbein, of course, being Henry's great portrait painter. And it was installed in the great carved room at Petworth because it was conventional to include portraits of monarchs within the context of a dining room. But here at Petworth, of course, there's the added resonance of the fact that Henry is perhaps the most famous of the people who came here specifically for hunting out in the park and for hunting the deer herd.
Hello, my name's Tom Dommett. I'm an archaeologist with the National Trust working on a one-year project at Petworth Park looking at the archaeology of the parkland and its historic development. The earliest evidence we have for the park here at Petworth comes from the beginning of the 14th century when it was just the Conager Park, or the Rabbit Warren, and from that point on it developed and expanded, came under the tenure of Henry VIII, who erected a banqueting house on this spot. In the 16th century, much of the land that you'd see behind me was common land for Petworth and the outward of the manor. and we know that that was taken in the end of the 16th century in order to expand the park, make room for more of the game, and to allow the Earl to enjoy the hunt and treat the noblemen who would visit him with the requisite hospitality.
Hello, my name's Gary Liddell. I am the head gardener for the National Trust here at Petworth Park. My main job is to look after the historic landscape, but part of my work involves the fallow deer that you can see behind me. The deer in actual fact don't belong to the National Trust, they belong to Lord and Lady Egremont under the Leconfield estate. There are currently between 600 and 700 fallow deer in the park. A few years ago this was numbering something like 1400, but the park is actually 750 acres, and with the grazing regime of 1 per acre, it was decided between the two organisations to knock the herd down to its present numbers. None of us are sure about the actual date of the introduction of the herds at Petworth, and the colour ranges that you can see behind me again. The fashion used to be, here at Petworth as many other places, to cull out anything that wasn't the dappled Bambi sort of coloured deer, but now the criteria for the cull, which I should stress is all done by the qualified gamekeepers and not the National Trust, is on antler size and the general health of the animal.
So Gary, I'd be quite interested in doing some genetics on your herd of fallow deer here at Petworth. Would that be possible? Do you have any kind of samples you could provide?
Well, I do. I thought you might be interested in genetic material, so here's some I collected during the week.
Oh, brilliant.
The leg bone here, the 4 items I've got are from different animals. So
Right.
there are 4 different specimens.
So
you can
the 2
test
antlers
from.
of
The
from
2
different
antlers,
animals.
yes, although they're similar size, they are in fact from 2 different antlers
Yeah.
because they always shed individually.
So this is perfect for the type of genetic analysis I'll do, because I'll just drill into the bottom of this antler here and crush it up. I'll do the same with the bone, just take a little bit of a square.
Yes.
Is that okay if I drill into them?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Take them with you and
Brilliant.
do with them as you wish.
Brilliant. I will give you the results back and tell you where they come from.
Fantastic.
Hi Jackie, thanks so much for bringing us here to the kitchens in Petworth House.
That's okay.
Can you tell us something about them?
Yeah, okay, this is a Victorian kitchen. The earliest part of the kitchen, having said that it's Victorian, the earliest part of the kitchen is behind you. There's a huge spit for carcasses, and there are smaller hooks for legs and sort of slightly smaller pieces of meat. Then you've got this wonderful batterie de cuisine. There are supposed to be 1,000 pieces. I'm not too sure if there are.
Not anymore anyway, maybe.
I haven't asked the volunteers yet, because they're the ones who clean it.
So we know we have some fallow deer out in the park out there.
That's right.
How would they have been used in the kitchen? How much would they have impacted on the life in the kitchen?
I think they'd have probably eaten it, if not regularly, then for very special occasions. I mean, a haunch of venison, even a venison pie or pasty would be a really nice meal, extremely nice. This is a pie oven. It looks identical to sort of say like a bread oven, or in today's modern parlance, a pizza oven. It works exactly the same.
So what cut of meat would they have used for these venison pies?
They'd have used either breast or a shoulder of venison. They're not quite as sort of tasty, they're not quite as posh, if you like, as a haunch or something like that. That would have made a much nicer roast. So it would have been chopped up, added to wine, glass of wine possibly, and then put in a bowl. A very thick, very hard paste will be used to put on the top and seal. Then it will be put in this oven on a little stand to stop the bottom of the pie burning, cooked for the required amount of time, taken out, and the crust taken off, and the meat put in another bowl, and a very nice rich puff pastry would have been made.
So this is a fantastic split structure that we've got here. Would they have been roasting venison on this?
Yeah, quite possibly, most definitely. I mean, you've got some quite large pieces of venison, a haunch for instance. I've got a recipe for that here. This is a fantastic recipe for a haunch of venison. It's wrapped in paper and paste or pastry. and there's an awful lot of fat and butter in between the layers.
Sounds good.
To baste, I should think it'd be amazing, to actually baste the meat inside. You also are told in the recipe to actually baste the paper as well with more butter. It's amazing. But the bit I like best is here it says, doe venison will require half an hour less than buck venison. I think it's quite good really. Here it says 3.5 to 4.5 hours. This would actually be like a giant oven here, using the screen and the screen behind in front of us. You'd have this giant oven with the meat here in front of the fire, and then you've got the gravy tray underneath with the big basting spoons for basting the joint as it's cooking. So that's what we've got here. The actual mechanism is fantastic because the heat from the fire at the back actually turns a fan halfway up the chimney, which is what actually powers all of this. So you've got the spit turning this way, and then you've got these hooks with their various hanging irons and so on, actually turning a totally different way.